Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday Instagram Live broadcast from Tablas Creek. I am, as always, Jason Haas. My guest this week is going to be Michael Kaiser, who's Vice President of Wine America, which is one of the leading advocacy groups for the wine industry on Capitol Hill. And he's one of the main voices for the wine community. But as much as I'm looking forward to having him, I'm going to, as I usually do, spend a couple of minutes while we're waiting for people to join, sharing a little bit about what things look like here and what we're working on. So the big thing for us is that it is crazy, crazy green. It is so beautiful out here, like 3 weeks after we got a big rainstorm. That was followed by basically 3 weeks of sun. And the landscape has been totally transformed. This is not what it usually looks like in mid-November. You can see that we have not yet gotten a frost, so we still have some of the fall colors on the vines. In fact, because we haven't gotten a frost, one of the slightly weird things that's happening is we're even getting some new growth on the tips of the vines. We're trying to mitigate that with our flock of sheep a little bit, but it would be nice if it were to just get it over with and freeze, so the vines can go fully dormant. But we have gotten the sheep out in the vineyard. Those of you who've been following us on social media have probably seen plenty of pictures of sheep and baby lambs. We're at like 150 baby lambs. And we're moving them at this point every 24 hours. The reason we're moving them every 24 hours is that there's not that much time for the grass to have grown yet. So I'm going to show you what the grass looks like where it hasn't grown, where it has not... hasn't been chewed on at all. So that's basically what it looks like here. You can see it's whatever, maybe 2 inches tall. So where we got the sheep in a week ago and then moved them out, it looks like this. This is regrowth since the sheep were in there maybe 10 days ago. And compare that to what it looks like where the sheep were just 4 days ago. So the great thing about sheep, one of the great things about sheep, is that they don't pull grass out by the roots. They clip it like a lawnmower. And so it allows the grass to regrow as soon as the sheep have moved on. And so we're keeping them moving regularly, so they drop their manure and they move to a different block. That helps us spread their impact out across the whole vineyard, and it also keeps things from being overgrazed and allows them to regrow. And we'll have these back here, the sheep back here in these blocks, at least twice more this winter. Okay, what else do we have going on? I'll show you cover crop. So we have planted cover crop, and you can see that there's also some natives that are growing, but you can see the plants that are growing in lines. That's our mix of peas and oats and vetch and clovers and radishes. Those are getting themselves established. And one more vineyard picture. Just happened to walk by what I'm pretty sure is the biggest vine out there. Is one of the Grenache vines that we planted in 1992. So it'll be celebrating its 30th birthday this coming year, and it's a foot thick. It's just a beast. It's amazing. A couple things going on in the cellar. We're done harvesting. The 2021s are kind of all put to bed and just finishing fermentations. So we have gotten to turn our attention back to bottling some of the 2020 whites, the whites that we've kept over through harvest. So that's basically Roussanne and Esprit Blanc. Roussanne, you can see here, this has been reblended from all of the different barrels that it was in. And the Esprit Blanc, that's on the books for this week. So those will be bottled after Thanksgiving, and we can't wait to get them into bottle and start sharing them with you all. Okay, I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to ask Michael to join me. I don't see him on this yet. Let me take another moment or two to share a few more pictures and see if this gives him a chance to join. So what else do we have here? one of the things that we did earlier this year is plant a new block. This is a view down from the top of the vineyard, from in between that old Grenache block from the old Grenache vine that I showed you, which is on the left, and then that's a new block on the right, which was an old Mourvedre block that wasn't super healthy. We pulled it out a couple of years ago, and we replanted it this year. And you can see, if you look kind of closely, those are grow tubes, and you can see the new vines poking their tops out of the tops of those grow tubes. So it's kind of fun to see those up and going. We have some very pretty fall colors. You can see the things that's Mourvedre. It says we are reconnecting. Okay, so I just got a call from Michael. He is going to be joining. There we go. Okay, now I am going to invite Michael to join. And say yes. And we will be off and running. Hey, there we go.
There we are. Okay.
How you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on here. This is fun.
My pleasure. Cool. So I gave people a little teaser at the beginning of a little bit about what you do
Okay.
and what Wine America does. But before we talk about that, and I definitely want to talk about that, I like to start by asking people, asking people to share their journey into the world of wine. Did yours start with wine, or did it start with public policy? Did it start with organizations? What was your path?
It did not start with wine. I was a novice for sure at the time when I was hired, which was July of '06 is when I started with Wine America. So it's been a while now, and so I'll just look back up for a second. I went to Spain, France, and Italy in college, and that was kind of my first introduction to wine as part of a culture. Where you have it with every meal, and being a 21-year-old kid, I drank beer, and that was at that time. So it was that was my intro of it as being part of like the food culture and the culture overall. So that was when I was 21 years old, 22. But I came here after I graduated college. I came to DC for graduate school for public policy. I graduated in 2020 or 2001, not 2021. Got my master's in 20 years ago. Crazy. And I worked in public policy like I do now. But it was, with more general lobbying. I worked for a couple lobbying firms doing legislative tracking and stuff like that. And I, I worked and I did some work with the '04 election and went back to the lobbying world. And then I left a job back in, I guess that was right around Christmas or so or October of '05. And I kind of tooled around a little bit, and I was working as a tour guide here in DC for a little while, which was fun. And while I was doing that, I had one of those nonprofit job search companies, agencies looking for, and I got a call. I guess it was late June of that year. It was right before July 4th of '06, and they said, can you do this thing with wine? I was like, well, I don't really know anything about wine. It's like, well, you need to know about, regulations, public policy, legislative stuff, things like that. I was like, well, I do know that. So I was originally hired with Wine America, and this is a little bit of a niche thing, but I'm sure the audience knows that you got to get every label needs to be approved by the federal government for sale. So this was back in the years when it was still largely done on paper. So for our trade association, I would actually submit the labels for them to the TTB and review that, and that's all that I did back then. And that lasted about a year, and then other things and people come and go in trade associations. So that led to me what I do now, and I've been in my current position since 14. So, but getting back to the main question is how did that just by circumstance is how I started to learn about wine, and over the last 15 years, obviously we're all still learning when it comes to wine, But it's been great to to meet people in this industry and learn the American industry and learn about the wines in the different regions, learn about different grapes, and everybody, I admit ignorance, a lot of ignorance about foreign wine. As actually, I mean, I know the general stuff, but American wine really became by default my hobby too, if you will. I'm one of those lucky people that my hobby and job intersect.
So tell people sort of what it is that Wine America does, because I think a lot of people know wineries. They don't necessarily know the organizations that grow up around wine and around wineries.
Yeah. So, um, you know, we're a trade association first and foremost, obviously, and like any or any industry, we have an association, an association that represents the industry, and so basically, Wine America was founded in 1977 or 78, I think, in the Finger Lakes in New York. Excuse me, and it was so northeastern wineries could kind of come together as a group to advocate for themselves, and so that was how it started, and it was largely based in New York. It was largely New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio wineries, and from there, it just became national. But we're the only national winery trade association. So if you if you know anything about wine, each for you, like in your instance, there's the Paso Robles Association for wineries, but every in California and on the West Coast, there's each region has their own association, and then each state has their own association.
Right.
And because wine is unique, where obviously 85% of it is made where you are in California, and because of that, the secondary states, if you will, they don't have the same representation or footprint. So, for instance, the Wine Institute, which is California-only trade association, does work here in D.C. too, but they just represent the interests of California wines, where we represent the interests of all the whole country.
Right.
And obviously, we work very closely with them.
Right, because they're actually they are the California Wine Institute, right? I mean, that's
right.
the
Yeah.
And I think sometimes maybe casual wine drinkers think of when they think of wine in America, they think only of California, and they don't realize the fact that there are now wineries in all 50 states, and there are a bunch of other wineries with really significant clusters of great wineries and really interesting terroirs.
Yeah, that's right. And so what's interesting, unique, is that the Wine Institute is actually a member of our association too. So I mean, we all it's as big as the industry is, it's still very small in a lot of respects. But and I think one of the things that we've done as an organization we've really done a good job with is trying to coalesce that industry together, because it's difficult because of you mentioned it, how each state has their own own thing going on. What grapes grown in the same grape grown in Maryland is going to go very differently in Washington, and I think that's what makes it interesting, is that if you take a Pinot Noir from Oregon and you put it up against one from California, it's not going to be the same. If you take something like a Cabernet Franc from Washington State and put it up one from the East Coast, it's going to be completely different. But there's going to be a lot of the same characteristics, but that's what's, as you well know, that's what's great about wine, is that the grapes will be generally the same, but there'll be little differences and nuances about that. And so I've had, as you can imagine, over the course of the last 15 years, I've had a lot of different and obscure stuff too. So it's always nice to find something new and unique. And I'll also say that the quality that I've seen, just the uptick in quality across the board from these kind of lesser known regions, even in my relatively short time with the industry, it's just improved exponentially. And I think that a lot of that is through the collaboration that a lot of regions do with each other. And I think that that's a testament to how well the industry can work together.
Totally. Do you have resources that you usually recommend to people if they're interested in learning about, say, the wine community in a place like Maryland, or a place like Missouri, or a place like a place like upstate New York? Is that one of the things that Wine America does, is kind of provide a clearinghouse for that sort of information, or is there someplace else that you'd send people?
Yeah, I mean, the best way we do that is under our umbrella is we have what's known as the State and Regional Association Advisory Council. And what that is, and that's how I just referenced a minute ago, that's how the Wine Institute is a member of our organization.
Right.
So what that is that's a group of state and regional trade associations that are under our umbrella. So say if someone, say a congressional staffer wants to know about wine in a certain region, if say a congressional staffer wants to know about, I want to know about Virginia wine. So, we'll put them in touch with the Virginia Wineries Association or the Virginia Wine Board or both. And that's how, in a way we are that kind of clearinghouse towards, for that information. And those state level groups provide a great grassroots organization and network for us when we're trying to get, something done or something prevented, here in DC. Thankfully, in recent years, it's been getting something done rather than prevented, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, people, again, casual wine drinkers may only be familiar with the patchwork of regulations and laws that wineries operate under when they've gone someplace and tried to order wine and realized, oh wait, I can't do it, or I can order it for myself, but I can't order it for my aunt in Rhode Island, or whatever their experience is. It seems to me like, in general, the restrictions happen at the state level, and the things that happen at the federal level are mostly positive for wine.
Yeah.
Going back to even something like that, the Supreme Court, the Granholm-Heald decision that essentially required that states not discriminate in favor of their own wineries in direct shipping. Are there things that are on your radar that are potential additional positives, or things that people should be worried about that are potential restrictions at the federal level?
Restrictions, no. But one of the things that was really interesting this year is the White House, President Biden issued this executive order back in July on competition in the marketplace overall. And there was a whole section on alcohol in that, which we didn't know about. And what it was asking about, unfair trade practices and consolidation, and any kind of burdensome federal regulations that maybe we can look at examining or getting rid of. So it was the first time that, say, the federal government is kind of looking at practices that are our friends in the wholesale tier may be doing in certain states, or looking at the examination of consolidation in the industry at the wholesale level and at the producer level. And
can we get them to take a close look at some of those franchise laws that?
Jason, that's an interesting thing, because that maybe this will lead to them looking at that, and the issue is at being the legacy of prohibition and the 21st Amendment is that every state has the right to regulate their alcohol industry, and I don't know how much the federal government can kind of wade into that without causing any kind of legal issues and getting sued by the state, if you will, if there's something trying to do something. So, but they, what I take from it as a positive is that they're kind of looking at these things that have never really been looked at before. Sure, ostensibly the TTB does look at unfair trade practices, tied house violations, things like that, but the consolidation at the wholesale level has led a lot of wineries, as the industry's grown, how are these small wineries going to get their product to market unless they're selling right out of the tasting room?
That's why so many wineries. That's why so many wineries are selling direct to consumer. It's
right.
I used to have these conversations with my dad with some regularity. Like we came into Tablas Creek thinking that we were going to sell all of our wine through the same network of distributors that Vineyard Brands had developed. That's for the people that don't know, that's the import company that my dad founded, that also represents Beaucastel and the rest of the Perrin wines. But we were planning to sell our entire production through that wholesale network, and it was a real struggle. And we ended up, we still use that network for our wholesale sales, but our wholesale sales only represent about 40% of our total sales at this point. The other 60% are sold direct. But we used to talk about like how big you had to be in order to be successful if you were exclusively in the wholesale market. And I think the final number that we came to was like at least 100,000 cases. Like if you are smaller than that and you're trying to be successful exclusively in the wholesale market, it is a real uphill battle. And part of it is because of that consolidation that you mentioned, where there are, in general, a few really big players in each state who may have thousands of brands in their book, and it's just really hard to get the attention of a big distributor or to find a small distributor that hasn't been bought by one of those big distributors
Right.
already.
Yeah. And, I mean, and there's a reason why you go into a Safeway in, say, Virginia and a Safeway in California. You see a lot of the same wines,
Yeah.
and you can't blame them for doing that. They want to sell what they know is going to sell, but it's and you being kind of like what I would consider to be like a medium-sized winery. I mean, you're able to be really successful through the restaurant placements and your direct-to-consumer sales, but there's a lot of wineries that don't have the wherewithal to be able to do that, or it's hard to get, a lot of it's hard for local wineries and regional wineries to kind of get on restaurant lists sometimes, just because it's to make one of the problems that I hear from wineries in these kind of lesser known regions, as they call it, is it's expensive to make wine, as you well know, and they one of the things that they hear from, say, restaurant buyers is that, well, why would I pay $10 more a bottle for your wine when this known quantity is available too? So for $10 less, and so that's a struggle that local wineries like in the mid Atlantic and Midwest, that's the problems that they have. But it's just one thing that COVID has taught us is wineries can survive without that wholesale tier and actually thrive. So that's one positive that I think has come out of this is that a lot of wineries have had to pivot towards doing the DTC model, and one of the concerns I have is to make sure they're doing it correctly and within the law. But I think an expansion of that is good for our industry.
Yeah, and it was interesting some of the preliminary information that got released from the Silicon Valley Bank report of wine industry conditions, and this is for the general public who might not be up on this kind of important industry marker. This is a survey that's run by Silicon Valley Bank that happens every fall and gets released usually in January with kind of the state of the industry, and they tease out some of the information in advance as it comes out. And one of the things that I thought fascinating is that like 30% of the wineries surveyed said that 2020 was or 2021 was on pace to be their best year ever. I think we're not the only ones who kind of learned important stuff during COVID as to how to make the most of the opportunities that are out there in reaching customers in maybe ways that we didn't know that we had to do before. We didn't know were available.
Well, and yeah, I think a good example of that is, and I know you've done this series, but the virtual tasting, I think, has actually been another positive thing to come out of this, because it, a lot of times if you wanted to interact with, say, one of the owners of a winery like yourself, or the winemaker, or someone from the vineyard side, you had to actually go to the winery, or you had to pay a premium to go to a dinner or something like that, or an event. And I think the virtual tasting is a good way. You buy the 4 wines or whatever that you sample, and you can directly interact like we are right now, with that. And I think I think it's kind of waned a bit, but I think a lot of wineries did that to their advantage. And I thought it's a good way to have that. We were all especially early on, like last spring, winter and spring, we all wanted that kind of connection we were missing. And that I like to think of wine as always bringing people together, and I think that was a good way to be able to continue that in a unique way to get people to feel more engaged. Like particularly if if you belong to a wine club, say you're on the East Coast, you belong to a wine club in Willamette Valley, or
Right.
where you are in Paso. I mean, maybe you're going to get out there once a year, maybe not. But I think that's a way to have people feel more singularly engaged with the winery.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think one of the things that the conclusions that I've come to over the last year is that we as a winery and we as a wine industry have done a pretty lousy job of bringing ourselves to where our customers are over the
Hmm.
years. We've asked customers to come to us, whether that's physically at the winery, whether that's at a wine dinner, whether that's at a table at a wine festival. The customer had to come to us, and these virtual tools allow us to go to where the customers are. And you're right; they have an intimacy that's unlike any of those other things. I don't know how many people have seen the inside of my living room or my backyard in the last year and a half, but it is a lot more than at
Too many, too
any
many.
18 months before.
But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I've been to your winery, and it's a commitment to get there.
Yeah.
Whether you're coming from the south or the north, and not everybody can do that. But I think that, like, looking at just using your winery as an example, the wines are in the range where it's accessible to a lot of people. I mean, they're not, overly, they're in that nice little mid range, if you will, of price
Right.
point. And I think because of that, people, yeah, if they want to see, they don't necessarily want to see the inside of your living room, but they do want to engage with you, I think, more than they have in the past. And I know you used to get out there a lot and do a lot of in-person events, but still, it's you can't reach everybody that way.
Yeah, you totally can. And I mean, the great thing about tools like this is that they are location independent, and it's that people can join from anywhere. And we realized, like, a good example is our wine club pickup parties, which we did every spring and every fall. And we would get like 4 sessions of 115 people. So we'd see 460 people over the course of the day. And that was an incredibly busy and fun and vibrant day. We've got 8,000 wine club members. So we were seeing, like, going all this effort
You're
to
talking
see,
to one right now.
but we were doing all of this event that we loved and valued. It was a great
Yeah.
event, and it was reaching 5% of our membership. And so now that we're back able to do events, we're continuing to do that in-person event, but have continued a live virtual event that happens a couple of weeks apart from that after a wine club shipment, and then also offering people who happen to come up here but can't be here for the party the chance to taste their club shipment wines when they visit the tasting room as part of their tasting.
Mm-hmm.
So we've become, I think, a lot more creative in finding different ways to connect with people wherever they are, whatever their ability to get to us.
No, that's right, and you're not the only one doing that. I think it's if and when we finally get out of this, I mean, I think that'll be something that'll be a lasting legacy. At least I hope, for the industry. Case in point from my world, I mean, we did a board meeting virtually back in June, and what we usually do is have people come into DC, and we take them all around, the members of Congress, and we do this big wine tasting of American wine on the Hill. And I'm
pretty sure we've provided wine for that at one point over the years.
Yeah, you have. But usually when you do that, you're taking people to meet with congressional staff. I mean, they're meeting with staff; they're not meeting with the member. And we were able to get, virtually, my board was able to meet with members directly, like you and you can't. That was one thing that we usually never got when we brought them here to DC. I mean, obviously you can't replace the one-on-one, the in-person interaction, although we've tried our damnedest to do that. And we've learned exactly what phone calls could be an email and what meetings could be a phone call. But that's just another example of how virtual might actually have an advantage over in person. Just that, because we were able to sit for an hour with this, Rod Wyden, who's the senator from Oregon, who is the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, which kind of oversees anything related to alcohol. So I mean, that was huge.
That's amazing. Cool. Okay, a couple questions, specific questions for you. Is there any piece of wine law, either on the federal or state level, that if you could wave a magic wand and change, what would be at the top of your list?
This is it's never ever going to happen, and it's opening a can of worms. But I think it would be so much easier if every state could adopt one type of shipping rule or law, and not necessarily have a federal shipping law, but have it be more uniform and figure out a way so it's still beneficial to the state from a tax perspective.
Yeah.
But not have it. It shouldn't cost $500 a year for you to ship into Nebraska and not have no permit cost in DC. I mean, which is great for wineries, but
right.
I think that there's so much confusion when it comes to direct-to-consumer shipping. And, if I was able to, if I had that magic wand, like you said, to redesign things, I would love to see, that's one thing that I possibly would change. I mean, it's a huge can of worms, obviously, and I'm not saying that I would going to, advocate for that, but if I, in a hypothetical situation, I think I would try to get a uniform standard shipping.
Yeah, man, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
The the I think the idea behind the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, that there should be relatively frictionless flow of goods and services from one state to another, like all you need to do is look at wine to realize that that is so far from the case in this particular product. So yeah, awesome. And the second question, with your kind of relationships and experience with all of the different regions that are making wine, for somebody who's pretty like your standard American wine consumer who probably knows a few California regions, maybe the Willamette Valley, maybe the Columbia Valley, like, are there a couple of under the radar places that you think that people should really look, that might surprise them with what they found?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the one that I think is more known than unknown is the Finger Lakes in New York, obviously. I think there's, if you like aromatic white wine with good acidity, that's your place. If you like Riesling, obviously, although they're coming up on the reds. And then, just in my backyard, I think, the Monticello AVA in Virginia, Charlottesville area, that's one of the first places. That's actually the first place I ever tasted wine outside of California, was there. So that's another one I would put it. And I, don't sleep on Maryland wine, actually, quite frankly. I think that, there's over 100 wineries in Maryland now, and there's, with every industry, with every region, there's this, certain producers that you're going to try to seek out more than others. But I mentioned the uptick in quality over the last 10, 15 years, and that's a state that I would really say has come a long way. And I guess to throw in an honorable mention is, I've really become a fan of a lot of wine made in the Hill Country in Texas. I mean, a lot of the grapes are actually grown in north of there and west of there, but there is some wine, grapes grown in the Hill Country. Most of it's grown in a different part of the state, but that's another region that I really think people need to have on their radar. And if you fly into Austin or to San Antonio, and it's about an hour drive. Yeah. And you can do it in a day, or you could go out and stay out there. There's some great places to stay. I mean, but those are three off the, those are, I guess, four regions off the top of my head that I say are really, I really love the wines from those regions. And I guess one that is not really in a emerging state is I've really started to like wines from Southern Oregon recently too.
Yeah.
That have really impressed me. So, but yeah, I mean, I always tell people that if friends or whatever, people ask me what I do, and I say I always tell people that if there's a winery near where you're going to be, or more than one, if you have the time, go check it out. And worst thing that'll happen is that you don't like it. The best thing that'll happen is you'll have a new discovery, and maybe join a wine club or buy some bottles to bring back to your hotel or something. But I mean, that is. I just think that there's a whole big world of wine here, just in the U.S., that people need to really try to discover if they can. And it's obviously it's something I really care about. But and sure, I love California wine as much as the next guy too. So, but I like the idea. We as consumers, people have really looked towards local small businesses, and wine shouldn't be any different in my mind.
Yep. I remember I grew up in Vermont. And I was back there this summer, and driving by, we took our 16-year-old to go look at the University of Vermont. And driving back, like, there was the Lake Champlain wine trail. I was like, that wasn't there when I grew up. But it's so much more accessible than it has ever been before. There are more wineries. They're closer to more of where people live. You don't have to fly to California to get out to wine country at this point. And I think it's great for people to get out and support the places that are near them.
Yeah, Dave McIntyre, who I know from the Washington Post, always says that now you can fly into Dulles and go to wine country here in DC area. And you mentioned Vermont. That's another one. They're doing some really cool stuff with those cold climate hybrid grapes that the University of Minnesota developed not too long ago, and have really started to they're doing those grapes really lend themselves to kind of the natural wine, if you will, and the pet nat craze, because they're so high in acidity. That's a good way to
Yep.
use those grapes. So yeah, I mean, that to your point though, it's just the amazing in the way people are growing grapes everywhere now. It's nice to see.
Amazing. Cool. Okay. So if people want to learn more about the work that Wine America does or your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just wineamerica.org is is the website, and my contact info is right on there. Or reach out to me on Instagram. I'm there too. So but the best place to just learn about Wine America is our website, obviously, and it's pretty dry stuff. It's all public policy, but that's important, and it does impact consumers to producers, and the trade association world is tough to get people to get involved. I always throw out the stat that across the board, all industries, only 1%, the average is 1% of each industry belongs to their own trade association that represents them at a national level. So, it's tough to get people engaged, but the work that we do really does impact everybody.
And I guess we should give a plug along those same lines for Free the Grapes, which both of us work on. I mean, that is sort of the consumer-facing piece of how do you impact wine shipping, particularly wine shipping regulations, to be more consumer-friendly. And that's freethegrapes.org, and that has resources to contact your local representatives, to send letters, to learn when there's actually legislation that's up that might be a good thing or a bad thing. So yeah, people should check that out too if they're.
And on that point, we're lucky. There's 47 states allow some sort of shipping now, which it's great. But the work's never going to get done on that issue. We're always trying to make it a little bit better, and we don't want to have those. It's been a lifeblood for our industry over the last 2 years, and I think we want to make sure that continues.
And 47, in some way, we can ship to 42. There's the 5 where the regulations were so onerous, or we didn't qualify because we also have a wholesaler in that state, or so it's like the overall numbers sound good. The practicalities are that most wineries are gonna fall somewhere short of that, just because the hoops are often set very high and at different sizes.
And you're saying that as someone who has a really robust program. So I mean, that just shows how difficult it is.
Yep. Cool. Well, I can't believe that it has been half an hour, but it has been half an hour, and I do try to keep these to that length. So thank you for joining me. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you, and I hope the people that were listening enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. I'm sure they did.
Okay.
Cool. So Tablas Creek folks, I will see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, be well. Keep your fingers crossed for rain in California, and have a happy Thanksgiving holiday. So, thanks, Michael.
Thanks,
everybody.